All this magical thinking that we induce through manipulation is very wrong. It's just something human beings have done, for a long time. We know from all our stories and our mythology and all that crap that we do. I think it's to try to manipulate people into patterns of behavior that are desirable to the group that accept it as what they perceive as morals or values or right and wrong. Like when you watch YouTube and they'll sit there and say, what's happening under the earth, what the earth is hiding. It's like it's not hiding anything. It's like it's ridiculous. Uh, if what's put together to maintain the gravity of the situation for your planet, right? Um, uh, you you don't um, think it's hiding anything from you. That's not true. That's irrational. That's a immature thought process. You know, and going and trying to fix it. How do you know it's doing that? Okay, if you go in and try to fix something because you're doing things on the surface wrong inside the earth itself, right, then you know, putting the cart before the horse. Why are you doing this, right? And so watch and see what it does if it's kind of like if you're smoking and your lungs go, and then you stop smoking and the lungs recover. And so there's just a lot of things that human beings do and are doing that are unnecessary because they're doing unnecessary things on the surface that affect the core of the planet, that affect uh, uh, the rotation of the planet, what's happening with the polar ice caps, the whole 9 yards. Right. So when you do things more correctly, you have a healthier body, right? And the same thing goes for the body that provides for your body. And so when you're dealing with people, I'm sitting here watching old episodes of Lassie and they're saving the apple tree from the lumberjacks having to do their jobs and pay their extortion. And it's been a long time since I've watched Lassie. It's little magical thinking stuff, in a perfect world, you know. And there's always as we always used to make jokes about it when I got older. I used to watch it a lot as a kid. And then when I got older, it's like, where is Billy in the Royal Lassie? And it's just very, magical thinking is very undesirable. Okay. You should be a pragmatist. And your faith should be based on reality. And there has to be reason to your faith and the reality that your faith is based on, right? It can't be logical, it can't be rational, it has to be pragmatic, right? And being abused for being a logical, reasonable, pragmatic person that doesn't want to be abused by unreasonable, excessive compulsive behaviors is wrong. And so that's why I'm pretty much, keep to myself now. And I talk when I go shopping and stuff, because you got to, how people are thinking, even if it's just for 5 minutes, helps the world be a better place, and just is just like planting seeds, like little Johnny Appleseed and stuff. And so that's what you have to do. When you meet people and you're around people and you feel, this person is open to this. Their mind is cultivated to the point where it's you could sit there and say this to this person and they would go, yeah, that's right, and they may have not have heard that in spirit for 1,000 years, especially given the dynamic of how insane and psychotic through linguistics and laws, written down by human beings and then obeyed as, oh, it's gravity, right? And so it's horrible. And so, I know who I am and I know what I'm doing. And I know it's based off a lot of the stories, but we have to eliminate the mythology and restore the pragmatist faith based on reality and reason to our communications and our relative thought process as human beings. Okay. Because what one of us does affects all of us, and what one of us thinks affects all of us. And it's very important to understand what you're thinking and what you're saying and what you're doing and how it affects us all. It's radically important. It's very, very important. And so it's something you need to be cognizant of, and that you need to be aware, what comes out of your mouth, and how important it is when people hear it and then they act upon those words. So if you're talking about murdering people to manipulate people with money and technology, when you say that and you're globally affecting billions, and then you have a guy who claims to be the person that's the central figure and the focal point of the book of Revelation. He's trying to get us all to obey the commands of Jesus Christ so we can stop murdering each other over money. And then you try to make him not as accessible, okay? When Donald Trump has access to more human beings' minds because of genocidal operations run by the corporations and the military than I do, imagine your zillions, Zilbrozo, whatever, now Lionsgate, okay? When you people on TV that are doing things irrationally over money that people murder each other over, and you're not recognizing what I'm doing to stop what you're doing for brain chemical addiction, that's very bad, okay? Do you understand the magnitude of what you're doing and the magnitude of not recognizing me and sharing my thoughts, words, and actions with other people? All right. And trust me, the people in this horrible corridor that I was born and raised in, and it says so in the book of Revelation. He's born in the belly of the beast, in the belly of the dragon. Okay. He's born in the place where they're doing the worst things in the history of the entire world. And if you don't think, okay, that using Wi-Fi to build nuclear, to manipulate human interactions with threats of nuclear annihilation, if you don't accept our economic oppression and manipulation, is not the worst place in the history of the entire world, you're clinically insane. Okay. I know where I was born. Okay. I tell people this all the time. The kind Mexican families and the kind Mormon families that I grew up with, okay, we're doing their best to survive this out. Just like Jesus in the outpost, the shithole outpost of the Roman Empire that was being abused and so forth, Okay. And so, yeah, you have to be pragmatic, and you have to, it's like I used to explain to my sister and my ex-wife, Stephanie, you got to be objective about your children. If they're doing something selfish, your love as a parent, not job, your love as a parent needs to discipline them so they're not selfish and hurt other people through their selfishness. You need to have your love show them how not to be selfish, and show them that love is more important than your selfishness, right? And so it's very important. And so, when you're dealing with one another and you're engaging with one another and stuff like that, it's very important to reflect before you act, right? Like on old Mulan, the cartoon, right? And when they write these things down, these things are thought and spoken, and there's action upon those kind of things. They're not just, when they're saying that, they're saying, reflect before you act. They're saying that because that's something that people in China have said for thousands of years. Don't act hastily. Don't do things emotionally. What if you're seeing things completely wrong, you react emotionally, and you compound the pain and the agony of the horrible situation that was caused by an accident? Like the little girl with the truck with Patrick. It's what do we do? They're called accidents. If they were, if people did them on purpose, they'd be called on purposes, right? Which we have. We do have on purposes. That's why we have insurance adjusters and investigators for lawyers for Matlock and all that crap, to see if they purposely killed the person to get the insurance money, right? And that's horrible. And that happens a lot because we're not living the applied physics of the Lord's Prayer, which is perfect deliverance from evil, right? And so, I'm still just flabbergasted and astonished that my family won't come talk to me. And it's like really the Orwellian effects of your devices and the fear of being abused like me are that great that you can't sit and have a lucid conversation with me. And you don't want to have a lucid conversation with me because you want to hide in the money and the technology of the fucking murdering child molesters that you vote for president. And then they tried to make me look like one, and everybody knows, and everybody in their right mind knows I'm the most protecting person of children that any of you are aware of. Okay, Barack Obama doesn't even come close. He doesn't get in the damn building. He sat and watched my family be abused by the people at Fort Huachuca and didn't do a damn thing to help. I saw people online saying that they were talking about praying to God for him to be killed and assassinated. And I got online and said, that's fundamentally wrong. And you need to let this man try to be like Martin Luther King and and the people he grew up admiring, and Malcolm X, the people that were trying to get us to live real Christianity and real Islam to the best of our ability in their time. And the Kennedys. The Kennedys were assassinated because they listened to Haile Selassie and they acted upon his wisdom. But people won't tell you that. They won't tell you that. Guys, when I got slapped in the face by a little girl at Mark Twain Elementary School in Pasco, Washington, okay, I found out from Tracy Sampson that she told everybody she slapped me in the face because I was insulting to Cherokee Indians. And I was like, my grandma's supposed to be half Cherokee, muzzle white. Why would I insult myself with No, what happened was they were talking about my brother-in-law, Jerry Alvear, and they were calling me a spick and a beaner and abusing me because I was from New Mexico, and they were being belligerent and abusive. And Walter was a black kid who stood up for me after she slapped me and I started crying, but he just sat there like a deer in the headlights too because it was all these white kids picking on the Mexican kid. And I said, I ain't worried about it because y'all nothing but a bunch of, just mean trailer trash. The little girl got up and slapped me. And then I couldn't hit her back, so I started crying. Walter got up and said, y'all need to stop. This is wrong. And then our teacher, who was black with a bunch of white kids, sent me and Walter we got sent to the principal's office. The white kids didn't get corrected. We did. And that's what happened. Okay. And Dick Cheney took it to his grave, and Jimmy Carter took it to his grave. Okay. Gerald Ford took it to his grave. And Richard Milhouse Nixon took it to his. If they knew anything about the Christ project of the kid they were studying from the book of Revelation, they called Lord, whose father's name was Ralph and mom's name was Mary. Okay. And that kind of stuff happened all the time in my life. Okay. And how do you know Mount Rushmore wasn't put up to rub in the face of the people that killed the 7th Cavalry? That God and divine providence. How do you know they didn't change the story after the facts when they found out the real facts? And then they built an even bigger monument to Crazy Horse because they felt bad about it. It's like, why are you tearing up the mountains because you feel bad about slapping the kid in the face for calling you trailer trash because you was acting like it? It was emotional. I was pissed off. I was about 11 years old, and I adore my brother-in-law. Okay. I enjoy Homer Moreno, Chris Martinez, the Ponces. Ponces were Puerto Rican and Irish from Austin, but still, it didn't matter to me, right? And so, all the family, that they were insulting that I grew up with, and I wasn't having it. And I was like, no, and I was explaining to them, I'm not from Mexico, but that doesn't matter because my brother-in-law is Mexican. Okay. The babysitter for my sister was Mexican. You know, the the that my mom paid while my mom had to go pay bills. It was not de Diaz and stuff like that. You know, most of my friends that I grew up with were Mexican. Okay, the Martinezes, the Saizes, the Garcias. You know, so it was frustrating to me. You know, these people were family to me, not like family, family. When you get up and you share and care together and you protect each other from bullying and you help provide and you feed each other and you care about one another and make sure that, you know, what's the matter, Billy? Is Lassie, is Billy in the arroyo? Right? You know, you understand, okay, that's family. Family isn't about sex because rapists rape and reproduce children all the time throughout history. But they're not the people there. You know, I think I'll call her this family. You know, they're not Shelby Henry. They're not Lawrence Benegas. They're not Lawrence Lewis Bowen. Okay. Do you understand? They're not Earl Parsons. Okay. That's my Ray Ray. Her mom, you know, she has mental problems and stuff. When we were in Albuquerque, we got to give her to the state. We can't afford her. We can't take care of her. She's got mental issues. She's not talking. She can't talk. She won't talk. I said, no, Natalie won't talk because Natalie's stubborn. Natalie's not talking because she's stupid. Natalie's doing however Natalie wants to do it. And when Natalie decides to talk, she will talk and it'll be her way, just like Betsy, the cat. That's how Natalie is. I knew it was my Natalie. I raised her. I knew her. Said, I'm not going to give our daughter to the state for other people to raise her. You know, and we had Noah. And the thing is Noah had the forms of dyslexia. Noah had more learning disabilities than Natalie did, but Amy didn't say that about Natalie. Okay, so there was different things going on. And I worked really hard with that kiddo. She's a good kiddo. She's a real smart kiddo. Okay. She's being abused psychologically. I had last night, my dreams. They were so uncomfortable and so abusive that last night I had trouble getting back to sleep for about 20 or 30 minutes because I had to remind myself that these dreams were put there by technological manipulation and not by the essence of the soul that provides, you know, I love Sleep Without Dreams. Old pickup truck. I don't like old pickup trucks. Kisses from a Child, yes. Kisses from a Child, you know. And squirrels. Squirrels are kind of crazy. Squirrels are tolerable. I like squirrels. They're funny. Yeah, they are. Yeah, they're pretty tolerable little critters. Yeah. I like squirrels. Yeah, you get right down to it. Yeah. I think when we're not cross cropping anymore, when we've had places around pecan trees, I think people tolerate the squirrels really. You know, squirrels got to eat too. Yeah, they're cute. You got to watch them though. You don't want to get too many in it. I don't know how all that works, y'all. I do not know how all that works. You know, I'm not God, and I'm not an uber scientist. And all I know is that when the environment is being manipulated selfishly, it's not functioning properly. And so, in order, you need balance, harmony, and understanding, okay, for your environment to to be healthy for you and others. And as far as animals and stuff, you know, I think that, you know, that one guy who studied Siberia and talked about migration and not having the mastodons and stuff anymore in Russia, I think he wasn't taking into account, I don't know why, the Great Wall of China. When he was saying, well, having this because this is that and that's not happening anymore and they're not grazing across there. It's like, well, you know, a lot of that might have to do with the migration of animals that were killed off by the people that hunted them for food, and then the Great Wall of China that, you know, and stuff, and then we didn't breed the Hereford and put them out there. So, you know, so a lot of that is just due to human manipulation and irrational, violent sex cult activity that's very detrimental to our environment and a threat to our own existence. And so anybody in their right mind could sit and look at it and explain it astutely and intelligently. It's just not that hard. You know, I've been this way since I was 3 years, 9 months, Easter weekend at the Mormon Church on Telshore in Las Cruces. Yeah, I've been this way for like, wow. Most people, I was born this way. Well, I can't say it's not all me. I know that a lot of the defense of Jesus wasn't my communications with Jesus. It was my communications with the eternal spirit of Father Abraham and others like that, pointing out the crime of what people were doing to, quote, Jesus, and then explaining it. And, it's one of those things you just got to understand. It would perceive relativity. A lot of people, it's part of quote unquote relativity. Einstein's perception of what you perceive as a theory. When he's talking about relativity and he's talking about, and how everything, everything in its place and place for everything, and everything, of course, yes, everything's in a constant form of what we refer to as flux, even in its most hard and solid and, diamonds crashing in space to its most fluid and its most hot and its most molten and its most liquid. And so you never step in the same river twice. And so the one thing you can always count on is there's always movement and a constant what we perceive as change. But the change, when it remains steady and constant for symbiotic life through life of sacrifice and holy covenants as we know it, that's a blessing from the infinite essence for our eternal capacity to appreciate this gift of life and love one another through the gift given and not through manipulation, because you're not happy with the gift given because it doesn't satisfy your lust, your greed, and things like that. So I understand what an important human being I am. I understand that. It's not lost on me. And I'm certain that Donald Trump is aware, and Barack Obama is aware, and Elon Musk and others are aware. They have to be. Okay. Because Susanna Martinez and the Koch brothers don't run the world. Right? Okay. Do you understand? So they have to be aware of my existence. They have to be aware of this YouTube channel, and they have to be cognizant of the fact, oh my gosh, I'm playing with my poo-poo, eating it in public, and then stem cell repairing myself to make myself famous. And this guy makes me look like I'm the sickest shit eater for money in the history of the world. Well, technically you are. So, stop doing it, and then you won't. I'm not making you look that way. You're making yourself this look that way. I'm just lighting the way. Okay, none of the truth of the faith of Father Abraham except done through me, right? So I'm not making you look that way. You're doing it to yourself. I'm just asking you not to do it. And I've been doing it since June 9th, 2009 out of, on YouTube, out of Sierra Vista, out of Cochise County, damn. That's all I got to say about that, people that encourage me and help me through emotionally and psychologically, and that I felt you're caring for me and your actual genuine caring, I appreciate, so that's, and I wasn't, like I said, I'm only hard on people that I expect a lot out of. Okay. And so if I don't expect a lot out of you, I'm not going to be real hard on you. I'm just going to say, I don't expect this person to do anything worthy of the reflection of, so when I'm hard on people and I'm consistent and Jesus says roll with it, then that shows a sincere affection, and that, that I believe, that there's hope, and I believe that you will eventually, submit to faith and the glory of God and stand up for the Lord's prayer to help deliver us from evil. So, and some people I'm not feeling it. I don't think they're going to change at all. But I'm very cognizant of the Sir of the Cave and the Sir of Divorce. And I understand the true meaning of those Suras. Okay. Sir of the Cave is the eternal spirit of, the family when they talk about, the throne with Abraham and David and so forth and stuff like that. And so, and so I know that's what's happening now is the Sir of the Cave. And the Sir of Divorce is life's eternal and grace is infinite. So don't become attached to someone who you think is your forever love. if they're trapped in hell and they won't stand up for heaven with you during this life, don't get upset at them and say, you betrayed me, but I'm Son of Moon, I'm Emotep, right? You know what I'm saying? So don't get so, I look at it, before I looked at, God, I'm 60 now. They could have came when I was, yeah, you know, June 2009. How old was I June 2009? Was I 43? Yeah, going on 40. No, I was 42 going on 43, right? And so, shit, that was a long ass time ago, right? And nobody stood up. And then by January 22nd, 2013, here we go again, and so, I'm not going to sit there. I don't, you don't damn people to hell and curse them, I'll kill you and send you all to hell. You deny the Lord's Prayer, you seal another page in hell for you and your offspring and your spouse and whatever and stuff. You stand up for Lord's Prayer, deliverance from evil, that usher in the kingdom of heaven. There you go. So don't look at it another day wasted in hell, because when you're living in embodiment of the Lord's Prayer, it's another day closer to heaven as you keep working at the labor of love of people to understand the truth of the Gospels and how to properly live them. Okay, guys? I love you. We'll talk later. Peace out, man.